Hi, everybody, and welcome one more time to El Camino People, the podcast. As you know, I live in Pamplona, and I always said, if you go through Pamplona and if you want to visit Pamplona with a local, please send me a message, and I will gladly show you around. And this is what happened with my friend Dan. Suddenly, we started chatting on Instagram for a long time, and I arrived to Pamplona thinking that it was going to be a couple of friends, and suddenly it was like 15 pilgrims all going to Pamplona for tapas, pinchos, and it was amazing. There's no better way to visit and discover a place than with a local. So please, if you happen to be close to Pamplona and arriving, let me know, and I will gladly introduce you to my beautiful city. And here's Dan. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And yeah, thanks again for showing myself and my other fellow pilgrims around some amazing tapas, all those stories, uh, that little street and the saying behind why it was called what it was on to the monastery. It was
Yes,
just
sal si
fascinating.
puedes. Yeah, get out if you
Yes.
can. Demands.
Yeah.
We'll keep it a secret.
Yes. Yeah.
But it is so fun. At the end, that's one of the things that I know, when you're a pilgrim, you're not gonna get the whole blah 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 historical. I'm like, you're really tired. You just want a little of information, the cool little places, and then go for a good drink and some
Yeah.
tapas. And in Pamplona, we have a lot of both.
Yes. Yeah. And some amazing dishes in that bar, and it was really, really popular. So yeah, I don't. We probably would have found it without you. So thank you for sharing your local
Thank
knowledge.
you for getting out of my chair and my room here and going out for drinks. My friends are all getting bored and old, and so it's nice to have pilgrims to show around and go for tapas.
I think I surprised you with how many. I said I might be bringing a couple of people. Is that all right? Yeah. And then I turned
That
up
was
with
so
like a whole
fun.
army.
I'm like, that looked totally, like the group of, astronauts going into the Challenger, all walking, you were all walking on a line. And I'm like, wow, yeah, who cares? The more, the better, always.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you. We did all appreciate it.
Yeah. And, we always start with the 1 minute questionnaire. So the whole
Okay.
idea is just, an icebreaker, 1 minute to answer as many questions as you can. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Let's go. When was your first Camino?
2016 Leon to Santiago.
How many Caminos?
Oh gosh, quite a few.
One city,
uh, Logroño.
one meal,
Uh, I'd just say selection of pinchos.
happy moment,
Um, Walking in nature with Camino family.
one color.
The red of the sky on the morning.
Canteen or camelback?
A canteen.
Long or short pants?
Short.
Fisterra or Muxía?
I've never been to Murcia, so it has to be Fistera.
Coffee with milk or solo?
I don't drink coffee, so neither.
Omelette with or without onions?
Without.
I'm sorry, we are finishing this interview right now. No coffee, no onions. You are a disgrace for the Pilgrim family. Really?
Banned. Yeah,
Man,
I
but
don't really drink it or
yeah, you are
onions.
so brave. You just tea
Just tea or yeah, just a
or
water
beer.
or but yeah, beer. Maybe not at 9 o'clock in the morning, but
Yeah, who knows? In the Camino, never know. And sorry, by my camera, we'll be doing glitching and coming back and forth, but we will
it's
keep it.
fine.
Black Friday is coming, so if anyone wants to support me with a new camera, please feel free. So, uh, never been to Muxía.
No, I had the chance to get the bus there, but I just thought I want to walk there.
Hmm.
So I've saved that. I think maybe what I would do next year is maybe just do a quick week and fly over to Santiago and walk all the way there. I didn't want to get the bus and cheat. So yeah, I've not been yet.
I have another Camino for you, the Camino dos Faros. It goes from Malpica all the way along the coast and finishes in Fisterra. Beautiful and cool. I haven't done it yet, but
Okay.
it's on my next. It's not a Camino de Santiago, but it's also run by locals. They
Yeah.
created it, so it's an old Camino that they've been keeping care and beautiful. And if you like hiking on the coast, it doesn't have albergues. It's mostly bed and breakfast or hotels, but quite an experience for people that are looking for more hiking, more scenery, and beautiful, beautiful Camino that goes all along the coast in Galicia.
Yeah, let me know about that. You've mentioned a couple of routes when we had our pre-interview chat. Yeah, I'm
Yeah, I
going
think
to
we'll
ask
have to
all those
do
details.
too many to walk. So anyway, one of the questions that surprised me the most is how and when people find out of the Camino de Santiago. You know, I live in Pamplona. The Camino has been on my nose all my life, and it took
Mm.
me more than 30 years to walk it. But from you, when did you find out about the Camino de Santiago?
Gosh, I think it was probably around 2016. I was looking for a different type of trip. I really wanted to maybe get back to nature, get hiking. And I'd watched a film called Wild with Reese Witherspoon, which is a true story of a woman who kind of walked
Hmm.
a long trail in America. And I looked at that and I thought, I'd love to do that. And then I looked into the kind of the specifics of it, and I thought that's too expensive. I can't get there, so I need something a bit nearer, closer to home. I think it was my mum. She mentioned, the Camino, but I didn't know what it was, and I found a cycling holiday, and I looked into it, and I thought, I'm not really into cycling. I don't really want to do that, but it stayed in my mind. And then I was at work with a friend one Friday. We were in the pub after work, and I just mentioned it, and I said, "Oh, there's this Camino," and his eyes lit up and said, "I've always wanted to do that." And I said, "Well, I'd love to do it." And we said, "Well, we don't really know each other, but should we try it? Should we look into it? Should we do it?" So we just started talking about it. We researched it and overly planned it, and then we ended up setting off together and walking, like I say, in 2016 from Leon to Santiago. And when we were doing it, we thought, we'll get this done, get our Compostela, tick it off, and then it'll be something else. But did it and thought, this is absolutely amazing. So for a couple of years, 2, 3 years after that, we went back and did Leon to Burgos. No, sorry, Saint Jean to Burgos, Saint Jean to Leon. And then eventually I managed to get the time off and the money to walk it all. And that's the story of my Camino addiction.
And you know, a lot of people, when we talk about the Camino Francesa, the Camino Santiago, they will say the best way is to do the Camino by yourself. But in your case, you ended up walking with a coworker, with a friend.
Yes.
How was the experience of, going to the Camino with someone?
I think personally, where I was in my life at that time, I'd had some issues with anxiety, and I probably wouldn't have felt strong enough or brave enough to do it on my own. He was very laid back, so laid back that even the thought of booking a flight or a hotel was probably too much for him. So I think we complemented each other very well. I think, yeah, you get a true Camino experience doing it on your own. But for me, being able to go with someone facilitated that and allowed me to get comfortable out there. So I think whatever gets you out there, really, if you want to go on your own, do it. It can be a bit scary, but for me, going with someone, it really worked, and we both really enjoyed it. And the thing with the Camino is, even though you go with someone, you're not always with them. You walk at different
Mm.
paces. You connect with someone, they connect with someone else, and you just say, "I'll meet you in a few hours in whatever town you're walking to." So you're not living in each other's pockets.
I don't agree. And were you one of those couples that prepare everything, or you were ready just for the Camino? Were you the planner and he just following your lead, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit embarrassed with the. I think I planned down to the minutest detail, and it became so rigid. Whereas my mate was just. I mean, he would have let the wind blow him, and wherever he kind of ended up, he would have been fine. But I think, yeah, I mean, because I've had the opportunity to do a few Caminos, I've worked out what works for me, and for me, it's a hybrid. You can plan a few places. Like when I met you, and you recommended
Mhm.
Church, Albergue, and Gragnon. If you pick certain places that you'd really want to stay, and then you leave the rest up to chance.
And I think that's the beauty of it. Sometimes the Camino, a lot of people they try to create this. There's only one Camino. You have to do it all. Just carry your backpack with everything, whatever. I'm like,
Mm.
for some people that's too much. I'm like, really.
Yeah.
I met a lot of pilgrims that they need the planning at least 2, 3 days to be relaxed and to be able to relax and walk because really and what we've seen lately is these late years that sometimes just the thought of arriving to a place and not having a place to stay for a lot of people that's just unbearable.
Yeah, I understand that anxiety, and when you've never done the Camino does seem very big and a bit scary, and you don't understand that the infrastructure is there for people just to walk into town. So I think whenever I speak to people who want to do the Camino or who are embarking on their first journey, it's like, well, do what feels right for you, do what makes you feel comfortable, but also try and put in some room for you to let go. So if you're booking, if you're using booking.com, pay that extra pound or a couple of euros so you can
Be able to
cancel.
cancel. Yeah.
Yeah, so then if you meet someone or you meet a group and they're moving on a town further, you can change your plans. So yeah, I completely understand people's need to have some safety and 2 or 3 days ahead booked.
And how was the first Camino? I'm like, you arrived to what time of the year was that?
That was September. Yeah, that
In
was.
September.
Yeah, I mean, but if I think back to that first Camino, it was everything that you could do wrong, we did wrong. I've got an old photograph of my backpack. It was so full. I think I even had an iPad. I had 2 or 3 pairs of trainers. It was just every eventuality, I had an outfit for it. And we walked. Remember one day we walked into Astorga. It's about 3, 4 o'clock. It was like in the high 30s. We ran out of water, absolutely destroyed. So it was a hell of a trip and really hard trip. But I think that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go back. I was like, okay, well, I've learned a lot from that. I've learned how not to do things. I've learned not to take ridiculous amounts of clothes and a heavy backpack. So yeah, it was a real learning experience. But just by talking to people, like you talk about, people taking heavy backpacks, and because we had the problems, we just spoke to an American couple, and she said, "Oh yeah, you can use this bag service." And I was like, "What's that?" And she told me about that, and I was like, "Oh, okay, well I've learned that." And it was just such an open, friendly trip that I just thought I want to go back and I want to do it better and I want to do it in a less rigid, structured way. So every year I've gone back, I've improved it and got better and got more comfortable with letting go.
That's one of the things that lady and as I talk and you've probably been hiking all your life. The things that you remember the most, the things that you learn, and even if it's a tough time that you
Mm.
enjoy once you look back, are those times that you're like, oh my God, I was so stupid. I have so much things in my backpack. I took this route and ended up lost for 5 hours. And that's what I think sometimes right now with the Camino. And I'm maybe one of the ones that is promoting it. There's so much information that I think people go over prepare. They know what is to expect. They know what to carry. People have seen too many YouTube videos, blogs, and whatever. That I
Mm.
think the best way is just to do Caminos and just make mistakes because I'm like, for me, it was the first. It's the same. Like in my Camino, I have my sleeping mat. I have a cooking stove that I carry all the way from Shenzhen. Yeah, and I use it. Funny thing, I have like two spaghetti bags just in case. One, I use it in Roncesvalles because I didn't want to go to the restaurant. Stupid me. And then the last one, I use it in Finisterre because I was going to carry the whole Camino thing. So in Finisterre,
Yeah.
I was with my cooking stove that I carry the whole Camino. But I learned, and as I said, and right now a lot of people they do they mistakenly call the Sarria Santiago the last 100K. I call it the
Mm.
first 100K because 50 or 60% of those people will come back and say, I want to do it different. I want to
Yeah.
do it better. And as you were mentioning, I first Camino I may use a company that carry my backpack, but then you work with all these pilgrims, and I said in many people, next year's I want to carry my backpack because now I know that I can do it. But sometimes I think, going to the Camino and doing mistakes like you guys did is probably the best way of falling in love with the Camino.
Yeah, and I think so many people make, I wouldn't even maybe use the mistakes. It's just
Yeah.
there's only so much you can plan, and you don't know. Lots of people, I would say, myself included, I don't walk 25, 30K a day. And yes, you can practice, you can walk. Like for me, I used to practice on a Saturday and a Sunday, just getting a couple of days in. But until you do consecutive days of 25, 30K or a bit less if your health and fitness isn't there, you don't know how your body is going to react. So blisters, back pain, all these things that, can happen, don't always happen. You can't prepare for that. So it's about, I suppose, to use an Oasis album title or song title, it's just got to roll with it. You've just got to see what happens and be flexible and learn. Like you say, if you're taking a stove, for next time that I really don't need a stove. And for me, I didn't need to take a bloody iPad.
That's the I don't know. It's probably that's the thing, and probably right now you remember a lot of things from your first Camino. That's from some of the others you just remember a few things. So, how was arriving to the middle of the Camino, September? A lot of pilgrims. By the time you go there, a lot of the Camino families have already been created, and suddenly you are in the middle of something so new. But a lot of people there already been there for so too many weeks. So, how was getting into that Camino vibe?
For the first one we didn't really have any expectation on Camino families. I didn't know anything about that. And we would meet groups and we would walk with groups, and I didn't feel that we were missing out. I felt it maybe a bit more when we got to Santiago, because we were there and everyone was rejoicing and everyone was talking about their stories, and myself and my friend Frank were like, wow, okay, we've enjoyed walking with these people, but I feel that there's a really strong bond that maybe we've missed out on a bit. So maybe next time we need to start at the start with everybody and try and have a bit of that magic. And it wasn't until the year after, in 2017, when we walked, then you understand it a bit more, because you just walk with people, you talk with people, and you don't necessarily kind of create this big group straight away and hold hands
Mhm.
and go everywhere together, but you just see the same people day after day after day, and it just, those bonds form naturally. So that is what brought me back, and made me want to, one, do it all, and one another thing was just to continue doing them.
And how was, when you do half of the Camino, what's the expectations that you have of this Camino de Santiago that you heard about? Was what you thought about it, or was it different than what you thought, before coming to Spain?
In terms of what I expected, I didn't really know what to expect. I knew what to expect in terms of like planning and walking and all of the gear and things like that, but I didn't know about the spiritual. I didn't know about the friendships. I didn't know about how a certain type of person comes and walks on it. That, for me, I didn't really do research on that, and I'm quite glad that I didn't really, because that was a surprise, and that for me was the thing that gives me the most from the Camino, that connection. And it's not like, say, going to like a beach holiday like a lot of Brits
Mhm.
do, and you'd maybe make friends with a couple next to you or something like that. This was really deep friendships, and lots of people had real reasons for being there. People were searching for answers. Some people were just wanted to get away from it all, and there was a real deeper sense of connection with people, and that that fed me, and I really enjoy that. And that's why I like to do a Camino at least once a year, because it just gives you so much.
How was the arrival to Santiago? Because that's one of the things, that your first arrival to Santiago is always kind of like different, or at least you remember. How was your first arrival to Santiago?
First arrival, gosh, that was a long time ago. Yeah, I mean, we got there and the cathedral was covered in scaffolding, so it wasn't great for photographs.
I
Yeah,
remember those years.
it was great. I think, having done, walked into Santiago 3 or 4 times now, I now know kind of the significance, and I've walked in with people, and I've walked in on my own, and I know what does it for me. And so I think the first time was great, but I was aware of how much I didn't know. I was like, oh, this is good, but they've walked in and they seem really close, and that they're crying, they're laughing, and I just felt that I was I was learning so much, and I was like, I want more of this. So it was a discovery, really, and it was the starting of my passion for walking the Caminos.
That was the moment that you thought about coming back again and doing the Camino. When was that thought come out? So a lot of people, by the time they are arriving to Santiago, they're already thinking about the next Camino. But some people, it's just after that, feeling fades off, that would like, okay, maybe I need a little more of this.
Just one more hit. Um, I think for me, it was realizing that, because we'd walked with two girls from New Zealand, and they started at the start, and listening to them and hearing them talk about it, and just hearing them speak about going over the Pyrenees from Saint Jean, and I was like, that sounds amazing, and maybe we can do that. And at the time, I could only get like 2 weeks holiday, so I thought, well,
Mhm.
let's go back and we'll do those, from St. John to Burgos. We'll make that happen. So it was, I'd say that idea, that seed, probably started to grow within the first few days of talking with people who'd walked further than us. And yeah, you start mentally planning in your head, and when you get to Santiago, it's like, well, yeah, I want some more of this. Let's come back. And myself and my friend from work, I'd never traveled with him before, and it worked out really well. We'd had our ups and downs with the trip, and on our bodies and on our minds, and it was like, I want more of this. Let's get planning and let's come back.
So one of the questions that I ask everyone that goes on a long Camino is like, why change it, in you on that Camino? And with you, there's been a lot of research that for being a more deeper change in the Camino, you need more than 2 weeks. That's what, with people, they did a study. But in your case, I'm like, something changed. What would you think, if you have to think now, what was the change in you that
I
from the
think
beginning to the end?
I mean, I was going through like a tough time with myself, and what I could say the Camino gave to me, I could feel myself grow. I could feel myself become more confident in myself. Every year I went, I reminded myself how much I enjoyed meeting new people. And on the Camino, it's such a safe space for connecting with your fellow human beings and just enjoying hearing their stories. It's just such a positive place for personal growth. So even though 2 weeks was it was I think we walked it all in 10 days, but
Oh,
to go back, it's almost like in my mind I can chart my growth through every year that I went back
mhm.
until I was able to take the whole time off and in 2019 and walk it all. And if I think about the person I was in 2016 to the person I was in 2019, I can look back and be really proud about how, with the work I did back home and the work I did on the Camino, how much I grew and how much more confident became. So I think the Camino is a big part of that.
It's amazing. And one of the things that, a lot of people ask me when they don't, and that's also one of the big fights on the Camino. I'm like, oh, you are supposed to do 30 days. I'm like, most people don't have 30 days on their lives. I'm like,
No.
that's quite strange. Here in Spain, we're lucky that if you work with your boss or whatever, you can get a whole month off. But
Mm.
most of the rest of the world, I'm like, your whole holidays, if you live in the States, you have 2 weeks maximum.
Only.
And it's really tough. So in your case, you did first the last part of the Camino, and then you came back and started in Saint Jean. How was the starting in Saint Jean and the feeling of knowing that, this year you weren't going to be able to finish the Camino? So that's also one of the things that, it happened. One of the members in my first Camino, she had to leave in Leon, and for her it was quite a break because she was, not part of that Camino. So for you, knowing how the end was and knowing that this time also you weren't gonna be part of that end, how was the new Camino on the following year?
The following year, that wasn't too. It was great to start in the start because you're around lots of other people in the same boat. There's that energy. There's that
Mhm.
frisson of. There's a lot of nervous energy. A lot of people nervously smiling and laughing. You're all going to the same place. It was really exciting. That issue that you spoke about leaving your Camino family, and for us it would have been Burgos. that that was a night, a celebratory night, and it wasn't too tough. I enjoyed it, and we met an Irish guy called Paul, and he arranged for all of us to go over and stay with him in Ireland. So that kept the Camino dream alive. The year after, in 2018, myself and my friend Frank, we went back and we walked from Saint Jean to Lyon. That was possibly the toughest goodbye I'd ever had because we'd walked with a group of people from all over the world and they threw us a goodbye party. I literally felt like it was a breakup. I was so sad. And I was on the WhatsApp group when I was back at work and I was seeing them continue to Santiago. And it literally broke my heart. And I vowed to myself that at that time I said, I'm never going to break this again. I can't take it. This is so tough. So I went and spoke to my boss and said, next year I have to walk it all. I can't do this. I felt like a lovesick teenager seeing all of my friends carry on to Santiago, and I saw that experience this year when some people left halfway through, and I understood what they were going through because I found it so tough. But what it did, it created a need for me to carry on, and it gave me the courage to really push to be allowed to go. So I would say to people that it can be tough when you say goodbye to people, but I think if you've only got 2 weeks, you can still have such an amazing experience.
Hmm.
And lots of people sometimes, like you say, they think, well, I can't do 30 days. There's no point doing it. And I would say to them that if you can only do a week, if you can only go and do 2 weeks, you still will get an amazing experience. And you've just got to go, and you've got to try it.
And what do you think is the best option for people that are thinking of, breaking the community stages? I met families here in Spain that they do it by weekends, a group of friends that they go by weeks. But in
Mm,
your case, mostly when you're talking about international travelers, they have, this 2 week period. What do you
yeah.
think is better, to start in Saint Jean, finish in the middle, and come back the following year and arrive to Santiago? Or do as you did, first do the last part and arrive to Santiago and then complete the next part? What do you think is the pros and cons on both?
Well, I think there's lots of different factors in there. I think maybe your age and your fitness levels. So my mum did Saria to Santiago, and she got a lot out of that. I think longer distances, or say if you were to hit O Sobrero from Leon, that probably would have finished her off. So
Hmm.
I wouldn't recommend maybe doing that if your fitness levels aren't quite there. If you wanted a taste and you wanted to get your Compostela, then Leon to Santiago is good. I personally would, suggest to start in St. John, but sometimes I could imagine people would, the fact that you can't just fly straight out from Burgos,
Hmm.
so you would have to get a bus to Madrid and then, go home from there. So I think if your fitness level is there and you've got 2 weeks, I'd recommend starting in St. John to Burgos. Like I say, if you want a more complete
And
journey
then
and want your
continue the next year.
Compostela, yeah, yeah. So it's 2 weeks St. John, 3 weeks Leon, or like I say, if you've only got a week to 10 days and you want a taste, and maybe
Hmm.
your fitness isn't quite there, then maybe Saria. Saria, for me, I mean, everyone has their views on Saria. Saria's maybe Saria to Santiago is very different from St. John to Burgos in
Hmm.
terms of just infrastructure and just the amount of pilgrims that are there. It's so busy, but I've seen the benefits that people can get from Saria to Santiago. So I think there's merits for all of them, really.
So true. I agree. Yeah, one of the things that I think a lot of people they don't get, and like there's a Camino for everyone, just look for your own.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking of doing the Frances, I think the best way, as you say, starting St. John, whatever you finish, finish. Keep
Hmm.
your Compostela with you, keep your credental because that will goes with you next year. And like you
Yeah.
can continue with the same credental. And if you finish there, there's not many people that knew this, that you can send picture of your credencial and you will get a certificate of distance from Santiago. If you don't finish in Santiago, you can get
Oh,
that from any Camino that you don't finish in Santiago. They can send you, a certificate of distance from point A to point B. So at least you have some kind of, certificate for keep for people that like these kind of things. And that's another big fight of the Camino. Okay, the Compostela credencial.
yeah.
Some people love it, some people don't like it. And like for me, it's just amazing that it's something that people are willing to go for beyond their comfort zone. Your man walking 100K and being in a different country, and like that's amazing. That's something to celebrate. So,
Definitely. I remember the first time we ever did it, we were going stamp crazy, just
oh, I have
every
my
bar.
first like every bar. I have
Yeah,
even a gas station.
yeah,
But that's so cool because right now I can go through that and I remember every little place
yeah,
thanks to all those stamps. I'm like, when I was in Italy, I'm like, some of the places they didn't, they have a credencial also for the Via de
yeah,
Francesco, but some of the places they don't even know that that thing existed. So some people were drawing me a picture or something. And I think that's kind of cool. Then you get, your next Caminos, you're just, usually the place you sleep or the church
yeah.
or whatever, is more meaningful for you. But I was the same, just stamp hunting everywhere, and then comparing like, which one do you have? Do you have this one?
Yeah, it's because you think there's that kind of myth. Oh, you need two every day, and it's like, well, no, you don't. But I think we were getting 3 or 4 a day, and it was
And
just
legally, you
so
need
full.
supposedly two on the last 100Ks to avoid. That's
Yeah,
the kind of rule that they put to avoid the passes and whatever. But at the end, I don't know. My Camino was probably like you, like getting three or four some days, maybe one day
Yeah.
just one. Some of the days it will be like just it is fun.
No, it's a great little thing, and it's it just adds another layer of fun to this. It's not just a simple walk. You've got to get your stamps, and it's just
And
yeah,
also
it
the art
adds
of stamping, when you see it from outside perspective, is so meaningful that you go to a local that is there and you give him a paper to put the stamp. You have,
yeah,
you need to talk to that person. You need to contact with that person. And I think that's the beauty of the stamps and how great because it allows you to connect with locals, even the language, even whatever, just the smile, the say hi. I'm like, that's why I think, the more you get, the more you get to experience local people and I don't know. I think it's something that everybody should be getting as many stamps as they can.
definitely. And it's funny you say that. I've just a story popped into my head. We on our first Camino, we it was on. I think it was near the last 100K, and we went to this tiny little church, and there was a blind man giving out stamps, and just watching him feel our credential, getting the stamp and putting it down, and it was we were lit by candlelight. It was just such an amazing experience, and it stayed with me. And had we not been looking for stamps, we would never would have experienced that. So yeah, behind a lot of stamps, there's an amazing, interesting story.
And then the cool thing is when you go home, you can remember those stamps and then you can talk to your friends that are tired about you talking about the Camino de Santiago one
Yeah,
more time.
yeah, and he did actually put my stamp on upside down, so that was a another added layer to it.
So then you go the Camino, you go your first half, then you go your middle half, then you go the
Mm,
first half, and suddenly that day came up, the day that you were able to walk the whole Camino from Thales
yeah,
all in one. How did it feel arriving back to St. John to walk something that you already have walked, but it was gonna be different?
it was exciting. I mean, I was walking it with my friend Frank again, but he could only do 2 weeks, so it was I suppose bittersweet because he wasn't able to do it.
Hmm.
We got him with a group quite early on, a mixture of Americans, English, Spanish. It was amazing to walk it and to do it and to finally like it's almost like this has been years in the making that I'm finally here and I'm finally walking. Um, yeah, it was. I was just really proud that I had the time and I had the strength, both mentally and physically, to get there. I did have an issue probably halfway through on the way to Leon. I got injured. I got tendonitis, and I thought my trip was over. So it's like
Yeah.
I've been wanting to do this for so long, and I was told to bed rest. I had my foot wrapped up from my ankle to my knee. I think I even had a bit of a cry. I thought I've got this time, and now I might be going home. I was heartbroken, so I rested and was very very kindly a French guy called Ferdinand gave me his walking poles. And I know we've spoken about walking poles, and you've got your views on walking poles, but
For me, it's
they
just
actually,
I never tried them, but I'm really thinking right now with my knees and the age, like you start to feel in your knees and everything.
God, yeah,
So I may give them a try, but so far I like my have my thumbs here, my backpack. This is my
yeah,
walking style, but I think that probably this year I will be looking in Black Friday for some walking poles. I will, I think it's something one of those things that once you're into hiking and backpacking investing in really good gear is quite important. One of the great
mm,
things, for the Camino, like we can do another great day about gear. But
yeah,
in your first Camino, don't invest much money on gear. I'm like, you don't need it. I'm like, for the Camino Frances, just the basic, and for 20 euros, you can get really great walking poles. But once you
yeah,
start hiking, and you get the Camino bag in you, if you invest in quality gear, that's gonna pay off for sure. But anyway, go
definitely,
back to and one of the things that I love, you say the tendinitis, and that's the pilgrim killer. There's two
yeah,
tendinitis, the fascia on the fascia plantar
yes.
and the Achilles. Those one are the two that, so many pilgrims they get. And so what happened to you? What was the feeling?
My ankle, the front of my ankle went bright red, and it started to swell up. I'd met some people along the way who said they could every day I'd just be getting back, and it would just be throbbing, and it'd be really hot. And a couple of people said, "Oh yeah, I can work that. I can help that." And they'd massage it, and it was absolute agony. And I think what probably made it worse on the walk from Atapuerca, no, it was actually Burgos. Sorry, Atapuerca to Burgos. Someone gave me a foot strap, and it
Oh,
was too tight. my ankle did not like it. And by the time I got to Burgos, my ankle was bright red. It was swollen, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't move it. And I thought, okay, this isn't good. So I went to the local kind of medical center, and he said you can't walk. He gave me some anti-inflammatories, and yeah, for 3 or 4 days after that, I was with my leg wrapped. I was having showers with a bin bag wrapped around my leg, and yeah, people look at you. Other pilgrims look at you, kind of a bit of sadness, and go, "Oh gosh, your
Oh, look,
pilgrimage
the
is
poor
over."
guy.
Yeah, but what I did after that, I had where did we stay? Carrion de los Condes. I got the
Hmm.
bus there to catch up with my friends, and there was a physio staying. We stayed in the albergue with the singing nuns.
Yeah, that's with the star. I have.
Oh yes, yes, that's the one when you have like the communal dinner.
Yeah.
But there was a volunteer there who was a physio, and I spoke to him about my ankle, and he looked at it, and he gave me like a free session. I tried to give him some money, and he refused it, and he helped, and he said, "Look, this will help. It will get worse before it gets better, but
Hmm.
just every morning when you have breakfast, just put some ice on it." So I had my walking poles, and whenever I'd stop for like a drink and a Napolitana, I'd ask for a little plastic bag with some ice, and I'd sit there and say within about 4 or 5 days, it went away, and I was able to carry on. Still with the poles, but had I not stayed in the albergue with the singing nuns, I wouldn't have seen the physio, and I probably would have had real trouble getting to Santiago.
Well, things when you start looking back to your Camino, you start thinking so many things that lead one to the other. That is like,
Yeah.
someone put all those things there for a reason. It's just quite interesting. But one of the things that a lot of people ask, is the Camino de Santiago and getting insurance. When you went to the doctor here in Spain, were you able to get the treatment with no problem? How did you manage to get check, or was
It was
language a problem?
language. The doctor, he didn't speak English. My Spanish was, and it wasn't, and still isn't very good. But I had what's called an E111 card, which is still valid even post Brexit. So they
Hmm.
took those details down. I know that uh, the girls that we walked with in 2016 from New Zealand, they were eventually charged for their work. They thought it was reciprocal between New Zealand and Spain, but apparently it wasn't. So
Hmm.
they eventually got a bill in the post. But no, from England, if you have the E111 card, I think it's changed now. You just show that, they write it down, and everything was free.
It's amazing. And even if it's not free, compared to another country, Spain is quite cheap, so you will get a bill, but nothing compared to any other, America or
Yeah,
anything like that, as far as I know. But yeah, they will treat you. A lot of people ask me, but will they treat me? I'm like, yes, they will treat you, in AR hospitals or any public health system here in Spain, you will be treated. And usually they take really good care of pilgrims because they are used to in these little villages.
yeah,
So just ask a local, if you don't know the language, just ask someone to go with you. But I seen it, and it's always, and that's one of the great things of the Frances, that you have that safety that
yeah.
anything happens to you, if you go to the Via de la Plata or the Camino, it's not going to be so easy to find a doctor, even though there's always one, in 1 hour drive by car. But in the Camino Frances, you have almost every little village has their own doctor over there.
I would say as well, my experience in Spain, the pharmacists, even in tiny villages,
Also,
they're
yeah,
absolutely amazing. They're almost
and they
like a,
know.
they're not far off a GP. They are so knowledgeable and they're so helpful.
Mhm. And they can also give you, some treatment, and they will. So as you were saying, the other day I have a friend and a client, and he was asking me, do I need to go to the doctor? I'm like, no, no, just go to the pharmacy, and they will
Yeah,
give you. It was something like you. He had a problem with his knee. I was like, he will, if you need a bracelet or you need pills or whatever, just talk to the pharmacist, and he will gladly help you. And pharmacies you have all over, and as doctors, they're really used to pilgrims and to their needs, because usually it's the same for almost everyone.
yeah. Blisters as well. I've seen some horrendous blisters on
Oh.
the Camino. Ones that people ignore and they just let them get really bad, and they
But
go
that's the
to the
thing,
pharmacist.
a lot of the pains in the Camino, it's great. And for me, I always have blisters no matter what. My feet, my body is the way it works. But there's a thing that once you have some pain that doesn't go away for a couple of days, like your ankle, or some,
Mm.
if you have pain in the Achilles, or if you have pain on your fascia, there's some things that there's a difference between a pain that is, just a hiking pain and something that doesn't go away for 3 days, you better get checked. Because there's some things that can carry on in your body forever. I've seen people with tendinitis, and that's super tricky. If you get tendinitis in your Achilles or in your fascia, you can be screwed for a whole year.
Mm. I think also even like hot spots, that's your body's way of
Yeah,
giving you a warning that, you don't do anything, there's a blister coming. So I always recommend to people that, if you get those hot spots, just put a plaster, get a leukoplast and cover
yeah.
that just so it rubs that. It's your body's trying to tell you something.
And the basic things, stretch, just put some ice if you have something that is pain, and if it doesn't go away for 2 days, just get it checked. And usually there's always someone that knows a little bit more of, as you were saying, if there's no one in your Camino family that's a doctor or something close to a
Mm,
doctor, go to a pharmacy. If they don't know, go to the next, you know, hospital or place that will get you checked.
definitely. And if you're getting kind of sore ankles and legs, I always recommend, if it's the season, go in a river, go in a cold
Oh,
river,
that's the
and
best.
that's
Yeah.
just
Beer and
sorts you
river fix almost 50% of pilgrim pains.
out. Yeah.
So you continue your suffering, your whole thing, and as you were saying, you took a bus. A lot of people would say, "Oh, he's cheating." I'm like, "It's your Camino. You're really welcome." Like, and my Camino was about doing this. This happened. I took the time off, but I'm catching up with my friends, and
Yes.
that's amazing. And but a lot of people, I have people that ask me, I'm like, I feel bad for doing this. I'm like, why?
I understand it because I mean, this year I went back and I walked it all, and that's what I wanted to do. But
Hmm.
I've been in that position, and I made that. I thought, well, I'm injured. What do I do? I miss my Camino family, and I wrestled with that decision about catching the bus. But with hindsight, looking back, I'm glad I did, because these were the people that I'd started with, and to walk into Santiago with them was really important for me. And I got stronger as I walked with them, and I enjoyed that friendship. So you do see people like they refuse to get the bus, they refuse to send their bag on, and I understand it, but
Hmm.
ultimately it's your journey, and if you really want to do your body in, then I don't know. If you need to get a bus for a day, if you need to send your bag on, there is no Camino police that are going to tell you off for that. It's by hook or by crook. If you've just got to get to your destination, and if that requires you sending your bag on or getting a bus for a bit, no one's going to tell you off. It's just do what you got to do.
Also, in your case, I'm like, your Camino this time was about going with the same people doing that
Mm.
Camino family trip. So if you lose your family, that was kind of like the whole thing. So something happened and you were able to manage and take care of your body, and then you catch up with them. So probably the suffering of being a couple of days by yourself was more suffering than the whole walking. So,
Well, it's about wanting to share it. Like a Camino shared is kind of, well, some people love a solitary Camino. I love the
mhm,
Camino for the connections and
yeah.
moments of solitude. So for me, I weighed the two up, and I thought it's a bigger plus for me to reconnect with the people that I walked with. So
Mhm.
I made that decision, and the bus helped me catch up with everyone.
And how was finally that new and arrival to Santiago with all your Camino family?
It was amazing to walk in with everybody. We there was a couple that we walked with, Chris and Lauren, and Chris had let me know that he had a ring and he was going to propose in the square to his wife to be. So that was an amazing experience, to have little glasses of champagne passed out and her break down in tears while he got down on his knee. It was, yeah, it was picture postcard perfection. And we had some other guys, Andrew from America, uh, Matty, and some other people that had already got there a day ahead. They came and met us. It was just such a real amazing sense of community, and just all of us partying that night together. It makes Santiago so special that you've got this town that you don't know, but yet so many people. You just go walking around the town, and you bump into this person, that
Mhm.
person. People are there before you. People are coming in a day after you. It makes the town so special.
And did you stay just for a night and then keep walking to Fistero, or did you stay for a couple nights?
In 2019, I had a friend who was flying over to walk to Fistera with me, so I stayed in Santiago for about 4 or 5 days, and
Wow,
it was
that's
an
amazing. I
amazing
usually suggest
experience.
for everyone to stay just for a couple, but being there for 4 days, that's great that you get to celebrate everybody's homecoming for 4 nights in a row.
Yeah, I mean, we met. we met lots of people that maybe had fallen behind.
Hmm.
The one sadness was that we had to say goodbye to everybody who was pushing on to Fisterra before
Yeah.
us. But it was amazing to be in Santiago for so long. Myself and a German pilgrim, Kai, we shared a room and were just going out and meeting people. And then when my friend came, who was all very fresh faced, and we went off to Finisterre again, and seeing his reaction to everything for the first time was, yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. And I would recommend, if people do have the time, to not rush off from Santiago. Spend a few days there. There's
Hmm.
always something going on. There's always a bar that's full of pilgrims, or a restaurant that's full of pilgrims, and yeah, it's just it's a special place to be if you've walked there.
And I also think, for pilgrims that do the long distance pilgrimage, like getting a couple days in Santiago to let everything set in, even
Mm.
before going home and also before going to Fisterra, because sometimes people rush into Fisterra, but you don't have that time that, your pilgrimage finish here. And then the thing to Fisterra, is the epilogue. And that's what I think it's great to difference, because I think that come from Fisterra, from Santiago to Fisterra is that time that allows you to think about what happened in all those days prior
Mm.
to your Camino. Because you go, you break, is the vibe is different. I don't know. Well, how was your feeling when you start walking to Fisterra?
Actually, hearing you talk about it, I mean, seeing Fisterra when you walk over that hill is beautiful. But I remember the first, I think because I'd myself and Kai had got out of the rhythm of walking, and we were out late every night drinking and seeing everyone. I was aware of how tired my body was, and it was almost like a phase of winding down. And I found I was a bit sad actually, because I was thinking of all the amazing times, all the amazing people that I'd seen, and it was coming to a close. So it was a kind of a mixed bag, really. I enjoyed showing my friend who was new to the Camino everything about the Camino, and telling stories and staying in new places. That first day, I think, was one of the best swimming spots, where you get to that bridge. It's probably about
Yeah,
20k or so in, and there was a pop-up bar, and over the other side
I
of the
love
stream was a rope bridge, and it was possibly the best swimming we'd had on the Camino. And I just, days like that are magical, because I didn't know to expect it. So it was a mixed bag, really, of one of celebration, one of sadness, of saying goodbye to people, and then also of new discoveries of swimming spots and new albergues and being by the ocean. It's quite a lot to take in, really.
it. After all of those Camino Frances, suddenly you decide to change and try a new Camino.
Yes, so in as in when I tried the Portuguese, or the
Yeah, I'm like, how many you did the Frances 4 times in total?
so I did it, so what, 2016, 17, 18, and so I did bits of them. Then 2019 I walked it all, and then 2020, when are we in 2022, I walked all of the Francaise. And then I had some time to kill before I was flying into Europe, so I went to Porto and walked the central route. And then this year in September, I went back to Porto and walked the coastal. So yeah, I've done the Francaise a few times and the Portuguese twice now.
And what will be your thoughts, people asking, which Camino to choose? Why would, if you will ask someone else, which Camino should I walk now? What would you recommend, one or the other of the
But it
different
depends what
Caminos
the,
that you have walked?
again, it goes back to that little chat we had earlier about, what's your age, what's your fitness level,
Hmm.
what do you want to get out of it? Are you a social person? Are you a person who prefers nature? Do you like to be around a lot of people? Like some people, the thought of being on the Camino Frances, that's surrounded by people, probably isn't very appealing. I
Hmm.
don't mind that. So I don't know. I mean, for me, I was really quite happy. Like the last trip I did, the coastal, I felt like I got such an amazing trip in 2 weeks that it didn't involve me breaking the trip halfway or starting at
Hmm.
the end. So that was a really great experience, to be able to fly over to Porto and walk up to Santiago. That was a complete Camino. But if they've never walked one, for me, the real magic is the Francaise, and it's a great starting point. It's a great kind of, I suppose it's your entry drug. It's what gets you
Hmm.
hooked to the Camino.
And then that's the question on like how many Caminos now we were talking. I'm like, do you have any Caminos de Santiago plan or anything that has been popping in your head lately?
Well, when I was going the coastal route that I did, I had planned to do the Invierno, but I changed my plans at the end when I realized how solitary it was, and it wasn't something I was looking for at that time. So there's the Invierno to tick off. I'd really want to do the Primitivo, but I want to wait for the
Hmm.
weather to get better. I'd love to do the Norte, but I'm not sure when I'd get the time to do that because I'd like to do that all in one. And I'd love to go to Mushu as well. I'd love to walk there. Um, so there are a few. I think probably the Primitivo will be the first one I do, maybe
This
in
one.
May next year. And then maybe try and do some walks in some other countries. Someone mentioned is it the Annapurna circuit?
Oh, Annapurna,
That's,
yeah, that's one.
yeah.
Also, for me, I've been backpacking most of my life, and I feel right now that I also need a more backpacking trip. The
Mm.
Camino is different; it's a pilgrimage, and there's differences quite. I'm like, I need something, more mountain, more carrying my gear, and I'm also looking at the Annapurna or Nepal. Some hiking in Nepal or over there, but that's the problem. When you have all these caminos, I'm like, what should I do now? I always wanted to be hospitalero. So should I go be hospitalero on the Camino Santiago? Should I walk the Camino Santiago? Or should I go to any other country and do one of those amazing hikes over there?
Yeah, I think for me, I think what I would love to be able to do, whether or not employers or life allows me to, is to go and do a bigger trip, to do an Annapurna, to do go off to the other side of the world, but also have a week or two just to pop over and just do a little Camino because it's just that shot in the arm. It just gives you that. I don't know. It gives me so much. So I'd love to always have the ability to do one Camino a year, but then also the time and the funds to be able to do a bigger backpacking trip.
That's the thing. I think, once you are on the point like you and I, we really walked many Caminos, arrived to Santiago many times. That's amazing. But just the thought of just a small 7-day Caminos,
Mm.
even without arriving to Santiago, the Camino can be in France, can be here in Spain, can be Portugal. That's little parts of the Caminos, just that gets you, that shot that gets you going for the rest of the year.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, you like you were mentioning earlier about when you run up to Alto de
But
Padon,
pardon, yeah,
Padon, you get to see pilgrims every day, and just like you say, even if it's 5, 7 days or whatever, just to be walking with people, and it's just okay, I've been charged up, and this will keep me going now for quite a while before I'm back again.
sure. And one of the questions that, I always thought myself, if you can choose someone, that has lived ever in the world, if it's right now, that you can walk with, who could you choose to walk the Camino de Santiago? Anyone, can be a famous person, can be a politician, can be anyone. Who will you know, love to have that experience with?
I think for me, it would be friends that I have in and around me back home, friends that I'm close to, and they're going through their ups and downs of their lives, and
Hmm.
I, I I know of the restorative powers of the Camino, and I want to be able to take them. I don't want to take them all together. I'd love to take each one and just say, look, come
Hmm.
with me for 2 weeks and just see what it can give you. I, I'm always trying to get friends out, and I wouldn't be averse to just going back onto the Frances again, just by almost like being their guide and just watching them grow and enjoy it. So if I had the chance and my friends had the time, yeah, there's a few friends, Ben, Steve, Martin. I'd love to take them individually on the Camino and just watch them thrive and, throw them in the river, give them an Estrella Galicia and just, watch them smile and love it out there.
And that's one thing that once you walk the Camino many times and you start seeing, the Camino in other people's faces is
Yeah,
even better than when you suffer in yourself. And I don't know, but it is, when you can see someone grow and someone smile and the things that you did grow and smile, and it's just amazing.
definitely. And being able to pay it forward as well. I remember my first
Yeah.
Camino, I had blisters and I didn't really know what to do. And, this girl from America helped me. And then I take pleasure in then being able to help other people. It's that real sense of community and giving. And yeah, I thrive and grow from that.
That's amazing. Anyway, thank you so much,
Thank
for
you.
sharing this little time of the Camino with us. And I hope we see you walking more here and we'll, maybe one day walk together also.
Yeah, I'd love
There's
to
many
come
more.
through to Pamplona again and say hello, grab you a
Of
beer.
course, Pamplona is always open to anyone, even if you're coming for a walk. Just remember that this is one of the beautiful cities. Even Dan didn't choose it as his answer for the 1 minute questionnaire, but it's okay.
Sure.
It's okay. We know he's wrong in a couple others, so we're not gonna make a big deal about it.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway, as we always say, buen camino, ultrella.
Buen camino. Utrecht.